Hello, I'm Kim Dunnick, and welcome to another of our Trumpet Recollections project. Today is October 12, 2016, and we're in Rheinfelden, Germany, at the home of Edward Tarr. Ed Tarr is extremely well known for his over 100 recordings of Baroque and Romantic music. He's known as a trumpet soloist all over the world. Ed is also known as having contributed over 70 articles to the Groves Dictionary, published countless articles in various academic journals. And he's written two very important textbooks, the first being Die Trompete, later translated into The Trumpet in English, and more recently, East Meets West, which is a volume about the Russian trumpet players and the Russian trumpet schools. Ed has degrees from both Oberlin and Northwestern in the United States, as well as a doctorate from Hamburg, Germany. Among his teachers are Bud Herseth and Roger Voisin, and among his students are Reinhold Friedrich and Håkan Hardenberger. Ed was a teacher at Basel for many, many years, and a professor at the University of Karlsruhe, also for many years. Ed also has been the advisor to a number of brass instrument makers, especially on Baroque trumpets. So Ed, thank you very much for inviting us to your home.
My pleasure.
Letting us take your picture here. Anything you want to add to the brief biography?
You mentioned makers that I've worked with, and of course one person I've been associated with practically all of my adult life is Rainer Ecker in Basel. Yeah,
Baroque trumpets.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I've helped him design Baroque trumpets many years ago, and we're still in close touch with each other.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
You've had quite a career as a performer, a recording artist, a historian, a writer, an author, etc. Where do you think your biggest contributions to the trumpet community have been?
That's a good question. I've made about 250 editions of trumpet music, so I think that's quite a contribution.
Indeed.
And of course, in my research, there's this book, East Meets West, of course, about Russia, but I'm still researching and writing articles. So I think these are the things that will keep my name alive once I'm gone.
I'm sure it will. You started your education in the U.S. and became quite a trumpet player already in the U.S. Then you went to Europe and you just stayed in Europe.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I had the feeling when I put my foot on European soil that I was going to stay. It just is a feeling that came to me, and it really turned out that way. I studied musicology with Richard Murphy in the United States at Oberlin College, and he said I should go to his teacher, Leo Schrade, who was at that time at Yale University. But then Schrade returned to Europe. He was German, of course, returned to Switzerland to teach at the Basel University, musicology. And I was studying musicology all the time,
right.
Actually. That's my academic work. It's not trumpet, but musicology. And so I was able to get a scholarship to come to Basel to study with Schrade. And so this is my teacher, Leo Schrade.
Wow. I think we might interject here that Ed is known as a fantastic trumpet player, and we might assume that his degrees were in trumpet performance. His degrees actually were in musicology and music history.
Exactly.
Who were some of the trumpet players you most admired when you were honing your performance skills?
Well, I think Bud Herseth, my teacher, was certainly one of them, because not only was he a great orchestral player, but he was also very good as a soloist. He didn't like to do too many solos because it took him away from the orchestra where he felt his main contribution was. but I remember him performing for my own edition the Hummel Concerto in E major with his orchestra, and I was both happy and proud of that particular fact.
Great.
So he was one person that I knew very much about. And of course, by hearsay, I would have to mention Herbert Clark, because I studied with a pupil of his, actually. Don Pratt was his name.
Mm-hmm.
Don Pratt left the East Coast to come to the West Coast, where Herbert Clark had settled down. And so I was able to work with Don Pratt, and it was just like being with Herbert Clark, for that matter. We used his methods and technical studies, playing
Mm-hmm.
everything in all keys, this kind of thing, transposing.
You mentioned recording the Hummel in E,
Yeah,
and for years and years and years, we all believed it was an E-flat piece. So I believe you were the one to discover there was a little flap or something. Do you want to talk about how you discovered, like in the second movement, there was that missing measure that came out in so many editions?
yeah, I don't know why that happened. Ah, yes, that's right, I remember now. There was a flap of paper, and when it was turned over in the wrong direction, this one measure is missing.
Right.
Yeah. And there were two places where they had flaps of paper like that, because the composer, or perhaps the people who came afterwards, they wanted to make a shorter version of that particular measure. So these flaps were actually having to do with cuts that were proposed to be made in that movement.
Because in your edition, there are two
Exactly.
second movements.
Yeah.
There's a shorter one.
Exactly.
So, but you said it was shortened by the composer.
Yeah.
And that's what you discovered.
Probably, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you actually went to the manuscript. You weren't dealing with a microfilm or anything like that.
Both, actually. I had a microfilm that I worked with, but then before I published the edition, I was able to go to the British Museum and see the manuscript itself.
So we've talked about teachers. Who are some of the brass scholars that you admired?
I have to think about this a little bit, because brass players are not generally known as scholars.
I think you're one of the exceptions in that case, yes.
Probably so. I think when I was starting out here in Europe, there weren't any real scholars as far as brass teaching is concerned. Maybe horn players, but certainly not trumpet players. And that, thank goodness, has changed. I think a lot of trumpet players now are aware of some of the sources, original sources of the pieces that we play, but I can't really mention any names.
Okay. Well, it was may have been a void that you jumped in to fill in many areas anyway.
Maybe so.
We're thankful for that.
Uh-huh.
In the late, I think it was in the 1990s, you turned to the romantic trumpet and started performing and recording on the. What was the impetus for that switch?
One of the impetuses was this particular instrument that I played on, because Reinhold Friedrich lent it or gave it to me on my wedding.
Oh
So
my.
I have this trumpet which is in low G, so I could crook it down to F, E flat, D,
Wow.
yeah, with all the crooks, yeah. So I was, of course, very happy to be able to perform on this kind of instrument, because there were so many pieces written for it, say in the late 19th, early 20th centuries.
And you brought several of them to light as well.
Yes.
I never had known the Hansen, for instance. I had never known that until I heard Vince DiMartino play it.
Uh-huh.
And it had just come out at the
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So your book, Die Trompete, came out in 1977.
Okay.
The English translation many years later, 88 or something like that. And then East West more recently. What goes into the research? I mean, Die Trompete is a huge volume covering the trumpet beginning to end practically.
Yeah.
how does one get started? How does one finish something like that?
I think that's an oncoming project because in my computer I bring it up to date more and more and add information that I didn't know about when the book was first published. So actually subsequent editions have more material than the original edition because I'm able to put it in. Right now, my publishers, both in Germany and in the US, are saying that book has been around for a while, and now we have this book by John Wallace and a collaborator, which is of course thicker, with more detail. And so I have a feeling that this book, the Trompete or the Trumpet, might not be around for too much longer, which is too bad, but I have it in my computer in any case.
Well, there were revisions in '94 and then again in '06, and is there a little bit of Reini Dahlquist in you? Is it always...
Oh yes, yeah, we've always, well, as long as he was alive, of course, we were in very close contact with each other.
Ed, you spent a lot of time and energy investigating the trumpet in Russia, and I know that this resulted in your book, East Meets West, which is a terrific volume and an area that was hitherto unavailable to at least English speakers and probably most of the Western world. The late Anatoly Silyanin helped you a lot with that in finding sources and maybe even some of the translations. Are there other Russians who were instrumental in bringing that book to light?
Oh yes. Actually, I did most of the text writing myself with Anatoly's help, of course, great help. But then I had several people who translated Russian texts for me because I wrote about Russia but never learned to speak or write Russian or read it. So I have various people who helped translate.
In the last several years, we've seen a number of new books about the trumpet. Gabriele Casona, you mentioned John Wallace and
Alexander
McGrattan. And then I understand there's Sabina Klaus, these volumes that she's come out of. They're just terrific.
Yeah.
What is the state of research right now? Are we getting more researchers, fewer? Is the research becoming better, deeper, or is it sort of lighter? Or
I think it's getting better and deeper. I think Sabina Klaus is the perfect example of this. She really goes into things very well. And I was able to write a review of her first volume and found a few things that were not quite right in my opinion. She had to agree with me. And so then before the second volume came out, we discussed it and she sent me various chapters.
Excellent.
I also have 3 of her chapters from her volume 3, which is only going to come out in about half a year from now.
Terrific. I was wondering when that will come out. That's
so I thought it was nice to be able to help her correct some mistakes before it was printed. Yeah.
Reini Dahlquist came up with a 2-volume set, basically a dissertation, but it's in Swedish.
Yeah.
And I recall you saying at one point that was one of the most important volumes of the 20th century.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's never been translated into English.
Yeah.
And I believe now it resides at the Royal Scottish Conservatory. Do you think there's a chance that somebody will pick that up?
I would certainly hope so, because the things he has in there, are the result of first-hand research. And I mean, I consult it very often myself, without knowing that much Swedish, but I can figure things out, having people help me here and there. That would be a very great thing if somebody were to translate that into English. Unfortunately, I'm not the person because I don't know enough Swedish, but I would love to do that.
Well, I was hoping that Verena Jacobson Barth might be given that. She had worked with Reini and was in fact at the Royal Scottish when I last spoke with her. But I mentioned we saw Arnold Myers. Arnold told me she has a job now. She has a university job, which is terrific.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be translating Riney's thesis.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, she would be the perfect person to do this. Maybe we just have to push her a little bit, and she has summer vacations and times when she could be productive in that way.
Yeah, I'll write her. I'll tell her you said
Yeah, yeah.
she has to do this.
I'm sure that her university would give her some kind of assistance in this.
It would be an important document, for
Yeah.
sure. So, good.
You know that I've done these Bach volumes, and you know that my Handel volumes with timpani are underway. My editions of music are continuing. What are going to come out soon are some English trumpet concertos.
Oh, terrific.
By Humphreys. He wrote three trumpet concertos, very nice pieces.
I've seen his name in textbooks, but I don't know the music at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think in about half a year we'll have these pieces. English trumpet concertos are basically like a French overture plus an added minuet, 3 movements. So the slow dotted movement, then the fugue, and then the minuet.
Interesting. Well, that'll be great to see.
Yeah.
Are they for C?
I think there's 1 in C and 2 in D.
Okay.
But don't slap my face if I'm wrong.
Okay. Ed, thanks very much for talking with us. This is great information, and it's so nice to see you again and to be in your lovely studio here in Rheinfeld, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome. I was just about to thank you for coming with all these very well-chosen questions.
Well, we do our best.
Okay.